we saw some pictures there of your company in operation. How are companies lining up to take a slice of the Nigerian power generation industry?
Well, good morning. That's a very good observation, actually. There's been recently the expression of interest submitted by over 300 companies for the unbundling of 18 companies that were formerly public utilities, and now the private sector is interested in these companies. So there's quite a bit of interest, actually.
And we understand that a Brazilian company has made a bid for $100 billion for the lot.
Yeah, it's quite astonishing, actually, but it kind of defeats the purpose of the unbundling to have one company come back into as a monopoly. So I'm not quite sure that the public will follow that too closely.
And how is the government approaching this? I mean, one of the great problems we've been talking about in this program is the fact that there is some kind of slowness and resistance from the state in many countries when it comes to these things.
Well, it's a natural thing to happen when you're treading waters that the public has not used to. When you take away the government factor, the people think they're going to be exposed to extremely high tariffs, et cetera, especially for the countries that are new or, let's say, emerging markets. So there's going to be a natural resistance. The thing that has to be done by the media and by the government is to educate the public of exactly what's happening. So I don't see that this is going to be a big hindrance, but of course it will be a slow movement forward.
So when is it going to happen? When are we going to have private companies with private money producing electricity for the public?
Well, that's a good question. The government has mandated that by the end of April they should at least have the people that are interested to continue, and that by the end of August that they will begin the transfer of ownerships. However, that because of the elections coming up has been postponed. So quite an aggressive time schedule, actually.
What kind of returns are people like yourself looking at with Nigerian power?
Well, that's something that we're trying to calculate. As it is now, the government has said that they will evaluate the assets themselves, and then there will be a minimum, let's say. And from that point, it's very difficult to ascertain what is the actual value, so we can't really come up with a number that we're target shooting for. So as it stands now, we want to see where the actual assets go, what are the valuations, and then we will look at what type of returns we can expect. But if we look at other emerging markets, you know, the internal rate of returns should be relatively satisfactory to the financial markets.
But how difficult is it going to be, though, for companies like yourself? I mean, those of us who've worked in Nigeria, I mean, the infrastructure there is very run down in the power sector. How are you going to possibly turn it around?
Well, when you look at this country, you have 60% of the population that has never lit a light bulb. It's going to be a very long and let's say difficult journey to get this to happen, but it has to happen. The people require the electricity. It's now not. It becomes a necessity. So our company and other companies like us, there's a lot of opportunity that needs to be taken upon themselves. The technical infrastructure has to be revamped. So when we look at all these putting on top of each other, the aggressive time schedule is something that we applaud. However, with the technical constraints, you know, we want to caution that we don't want to lose the public interest by not meeting those certain milestones.
But how expensive and how long is it going to take you to earn your money back, investors like yourself?
The projections are something in between 40 and 100 billion US over the next 20 years. And in the very short term, they're seeking approximately 4,000 megawatts additional capacity by 2013. If we look at these in just numbers, we're looking at about 8 to 10 billion US.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting insights there from Erhan Cetinok, CEO of Encon, up there bidding for a slice of the power industry in Nigeria. Coming back to our panel here in the studio, James Styan from Vin24. We've got Doug Kuni here from the South African Independent Power Providers, and also we've got Mike Rossouw, who is one of representative of the Intensive Users Association. James, what did you think? You heard all that from Nigeria.
I don't totally get it. If I understand correctly, they're bidding to buy a portion of the existing infrastructure. I mean, what's the point? You're not going to be expanding the power infrastructure. You're going to be buying old, outdated power lines and power infrastructure when you have a country that needs new capacity. So I don't totally get what the excitement is about, because you need new capacity. And just secondly, I don't know what the labor situation is like in Nigeria, but you won't see that happening here. I mean, just recently they were trying to sell off a 30% stake in Kusile, the new power station Eskom's building. That didn't work out because Labour was totally against it. Numerous reasons, amongst others, fears of increases in tariffs, and the dreaded privatization word. So it's not something I think that we'll see here. Selling off existing infrastructure to private players, and I don't entirely see how it's going to help Nigeria get new capacity.
Doug, I mean, the Nigerian government's put out a target, even 16,800 megawatts for the future. What do you think from what you've heard here from Lagos?
I think the way they're going about it is probably the only way they can, by privatizing it, by putting it out to private developers. I think the investment will come in. The current state of the existing assets needs refurbishment, recommissioning. They have quite a lot of installed capacity, but not all of it's running. And then in addition to that, there's the 4,000 megawatts, which they still have to install by 2013. That's a tall order. But the private investors coming in, if the conditions are right, they will make the game happen.
So Mike, what do you think? I mean, is Nigeria ahead of the game or behind the game in terms of getting private money in?
If they're considering selling wires, it's the wrong thing to do. You cannot sell a monopoly, a natural monopoly. I think every single country in the world that's, for example, privatized the railways in Britain was a failure, because you can't privatize rails. Rails is a monopoly and has to be maintained to the highest safety standards. So if they're considering selling transmission and distribution, I have my serious doubts as to whether that's the right thing to do, because that's not where private investors should play. But absolutely, in terms of generation, I think private investors can make a major contribution in that regard. And in some cases, I think we can learn from their experiences in that area, for sure.